Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Construction Corner podcast. Our main host, Dillon, is on vacation this week, so you get me, Matt. I'll be filling in and running a solo episode today, and we'll see how badly I can screw this one up. I appreciate everybody for tuning in every Tuesday. Dillon and I both really appreciate the feedback we're getting and the continued downloads. I'll be real honest, though. We're going to start using Andy Frisella's fee. We don't charge anything for the podcast. We don't put advertising in this podcast. The fee that we ask of you is if you get any value out of this whatsoever, take the 5 seconds when you're done listening and share it. Send it to a friend, send it to a family member, subscribe so you don't miss our new episodes. All of these things will really help us continue to keep growing the show as we want to, and if you're listening week after week as you want to also. So do us that solid, and we'll keep showing up here on Tuesdays for you. So with that, we're going to get into this episode. Again, it's solo, so it's going to be a little short and sweet, but I kind of like this format because it allows me to rattle off some things, and there's no one here to tell me I'm an asshole and that I'm wrong. So here we go. Today we're going to talk about what I like to call holes in the boat. It's a good time of year to really be reflecting on this theory of mine, this issue, because with the new year coming, everyone starts making resolutions and thinking of ways to improve themselves, improve their business, improve their lifestyles, the whole list. And what it does, it provides a good mindset, a good time frame from a business perspective to really sit down and investigate everything that's going on in your business, the good, the bad, and most importantly, the ugly. We're going to focus on the ugly tonight with this conversation. So every business, big, small, young, old, profitable, non-profitable, doesn't matter. Every business has issues. There is no perfect business. There's no perfect organization. It's just not possible. Now, the good ones, we strive for perfection, knowing we'll never get it, knowing we'll never make it there. But it's that drive, it's that hunger, it's that journey to try to fight and claw our way to perfection that we thrive on. And that's where greatness comes from. So when you really sit down and get strategic and you start laying out on paper what the issues are in your company, it's a very powerful exercise. Everybody will typically know most of them, everyone in your organization, that is. So when we do it at Schafer Construction, my business partner and myself are the only two really involved for the most part. Sometimes we'll bring in other people here and there. But we sit down and typically, in full candor, I lead the conversation because I've got the biggest mouth and I like to talk. But I'll start laying out the issues that we have. And the way I explain this to my team, and I've heard it numerous times from other people, so I'm not taking credit for this saying, but our issues are like holes in a boat. And when we're small, when the company was very small, doing very minimal revenue with a very, very low overhead and very low head count, those holes in the boat were pretty tiny. And when the holes in your boat are tiny, they're very easy to plug. You can stick your finger over one, put your foot over another, throw your beer can on one. And as long as you keep a general pulse on the leaks that are coming in, you'll probably be just fine. And you never really have to deal with anything. Well, that's a shit way to do business. Let me just say that for one. But it is possible, and you can nurse on through. You can row your boat where you need to, and you're probably not going to sink and drown. The problem is that if you're in an organization that starts off very small like that, and you have strategic growth targets in mind, meaning that you're not content to stay at that level of revenue, of that level of income, that level of project complexity, or whatever it is, if you're planning on growing, getting bigger in some aspect, some respect of the business, as the boat stretches, so do those holes. And what started off as really tiny holes with tiny little leaks, they start stretching out. And the bigger that boat gets, the bigger those holes get. And if you don't stop and fix the problems and actually solve the issues of what's going on, those holes are going to get so big that your boat is going to fill up with water, you're going to sink, and you might as well drown. Nobody wants to do that, but I see it happen all the time. It happens to lots of companies. They experience rapid growth. They don't know how to contain it. They don't know how to act. They don't know how to operate anymore. And those holes in the boat get so large that the business goes away. I don't want to be in that spot ever. I've seen it. I've been very, very close to it. So what we're doing and what we do every year is we sit down, my partner and I, that is, and we have these, we call them P&S meetings, planning and strategy. And we take a few hours, however long it takes, and we list out all of our issues as we each see them. And typically we'll have, a handful of issues each. And out of that handful of issues, probably 80% of them are duplicated between his list and between my list. So we'll pick those duplicated issues as the ones we really focus on first, because they're aspects of the business that we've both noticed that need addressing. I will say this whole theory of mine, the holes in the boat theory, and really getting down to the meat and potatoes of fixing problems and brutal honesty, it's been a long time sales pitch of mine. It did not adopt to the company very easily when I came on board as partner. But I think we've gotten to a point now, I know we've gotten to a point now where these conversations, while they're not always comfortable, they are always necessary. And my team, especially at the top, know this. And we can keep emotions out of most conversations and handle things like this from a strictly strategic leadership perspective. And that's how things get done. That's how you affect real change in any organization. So first you identify the problems. And what a lot of people do, and this is kind of a reference to personal lifestyle, but it also plays in business, is they make these New Year's resolutions. I'm a fat ass, so I want to lose some weight. Or I am lazy, so I'm going to start running. Or you name it. I want to have $1 million by the end of the year, so I'm going to work really hard, or I'm going to start a business, or whatever it may be. A lot of people start a lot of New Year's resolutions. It's a fun thing to do, and you kind of get your dreams going. And vision and dreams is great to have, but they have to last longer than New Year's Eve and the champagne buzz. Because what happens to Dillon's not here to correct me, so I'm just going to make my own statistics. But what happens to 90% of the people who come up with these resolutions is by the time, February hits, maybe March at the latest, they're all gone. Everyone has resorted back to their same old ways. They're doing things the same way they used to. They aren't keeping up on their new, improved habits. And that's just a shitty fact of reality. So we don't call them resolutions in the business world. I don't call them resolutions in my personal life or at my home either. We call them process improvements. We call them getting the work done. We call them promises, things of that nature. So again, getting back to the topic at hand here, once you start listing out what these issues are, then you have to kind of scale the conversation back and get laser focused on what is the real issue. What is the biggest, ugliest, worst issue that we have at the business today? And that's the one we're going to focus on. You could focus on all of the issues, but what ends up happening is the conversation gets watered down. You end up with a to-do list that's impossibly long, and just like New Year's resolutions, very few things will ever actually get done. So we pare it down to one real issue. And I'm going to be open and honest today, as I usually am. But our biggest issue at Schafer Construction right now is we have a very, very striking lack of documented systems and processes. And that stems from our growth. We started off as that very small company with very small holes in the boat, and we could plug them with our beer cans and our toes and our fingers. We have experienced some pretty great growth in the last few years. And those holes started stretching out very, very quickly. And we have noticed very, very rapidly that this is an issue we have to solve as a group right now. There is no time to wait. It has to get solved. It has to get fixed, or we will not be able to sustain the pace at which we're all running. So basically what it comes down to is, the group that started off as 2 people now is 6 people, and we have essentially 6 ways of doing everything. That's no way to proceed. That's no way to grow. That's no way to stay organized. It breeds chaos. It leads to dissatisfaction. It leads to conflict, avoidable conflict. So we are focusing this year on fixing that. We're going to make a very concerted effort on documenting our systems, writing processes to support those systems. And once those are all documented and in place, that's it. It is the law, it is the Bible, and everyone will follow suit and will handle whatever task it may be exactly how we've all agreed they will be handled. There's no discussion, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. That is it. And we'll, of course, if there's better ways to do things, we can all sit down as a group or whoever's involved and brainstorm and talk about it. And if a system needs changing or a process needs changing and there's a valid reason to do it, that's great. Then we change it. We shift and pivot a little bit, change the process, but then everyone follows that process. It's not I've always done it this way, so I'm going to do it this way. And Matt's done it this other way, so he's going to continue to do it this way. Because we all think our own way of doing things is the best. Let's face it. I'm not going to bullshit you. My way always is the best. At least I think so. So we put a focus on fixing what's broken. Our biggest hole is systems. That's going to be a topic that, especially on these solo episodes where I get 10, 15 minutes to rant by myself, I'm going to focus a lot on that, at least in the next coming months, and hopefully give you guys some insight into how things are going, how the process improvement is going, and hopefully at the end what the conclusion was, and we'll be able to tell you that things are fixed, at least to some point. So it's all about processes, obviously, is what we're talking about, but there's a very specific process for this exercise that I wanted to touch on real briefly here, and it comes from the book Traction, from the EOS system. Dillon and I have talked about both of these for a few times throughout the last year, but it's they call it IDS, and IDS stands for Identify, Discuss, and Solve. And it's simply a way of tearing the Band-Aid off and removing emotion from a conversation and getting down to the heart of what your real issues are. So identify, you really have to dig in. You have to find the root cause of what your issues are. So let's say we sit down and I say my business partner, doesn't cost track his projects correctly, and it's leading to numbers that are not accurate. Okay, well, that sucks, but that's really not the issue, is it? It's not. And he could say the same thing. Well, Matt, he cost tracks this way and it doesn't make sense to me, so I don't understand the reports we're looking at. Well, that's not really the issue either, is it? No, it's not. The issue, if you start digging and digging, and this is what we did, we went through this exercise recently, the issue is that we don't do it the same way. We don't follow a standard. We don't have a standard operating procedure that guides us through this process to build these systems so that everything is fresh and organized, and everyone can start from zero and look at documents or look at reports and know exactly where they come from. So that's the first step. That's identify. Once you identify what the real issue is, what the root cause problem is, then you need to discuss it. And this is where people have a hard time. You have to be open. You have to be honest. In my world, you have to be brutally honest. The Band-Aid has been ripped off at this point. There are no foo-foo conversations anymore until this exercise is over. So everyone involved needs to participate. There are no wallflowers allowed in these meetings. I will throw you out of my meeting if you're not participating. Everyone participates. We all share our thoughts, ideas, concerns, and possible solutions. And it leads to healthy discussion. It leads to healthy debate. Sometimes it leads to healthy conflict. Sometimes it leads to bigger conflict. Sometimes it leads to arguments. But the point is, you get your point across. Everybody gets a chance to talk. And once everything's out there, then, and only then, are you able to move to the next step, which is the S in IDS, and that's solve. this is where you have to decide, you have to collaborate and figure out what the solution is. There's a different solution for every problem, a different solution for every industry and organization, every mindset. But much like the D phase, the discuss phase, you all need to have input. Everybody gets input. Everybody has to be able to bring something to the table. It doesn't always go very quickly. It doesn't always go very smoothly, but you have to get to a point where everyone involved, all of the decision makers in your group, agree, or at the very least, they can live with it. They're not going to piss and moan and cuss and fight every time they have to do a cost tracking estimate the way that we've now specified, for example. So that's the IDS system. That's in a nutshell the process that we follow at Schafer Construction in these meetings. And it works really well. So again, stay tuned and we'll see. My goal is within the first quarter here to at least have our systems well defined and be well on our way to heavy documentation and a standardized way of doing all of the tasks that each individual in our group has to do on a daily basis. And this does a lot of things for you. It in our case, it will solve some of the holes in the boat. It'll plug them, patch them up so we don't have to worry about them anymore. But it also sets us up for future success because we are a growing organization and I continue to keep growing it. So as we bring on new people, new bodies, it's going to be really cool at one point in time when I have a Schafer Construction manual that I can give to someone, and not in the sense that I'm going to give them this book and say, go sit in the corner, read this however many page document and come back when you understand how to do everything perfectly well. But it's a reference document for people. So the new guy or the new girl, new man or woman can come in, and after they get trained on their specific project or their specific job, rather, their tasks, they can go back and have some quiet reflection time. Go and trial and error, try and figure this out. Do what you're supposed to be doing for whatever the task or the job is. And if you get caught up, you've got this book right there, ready to open, reference things. You can flip right to the page that has to do with cost tracking, to go back to my example. And you can read pretty well step by step how to properly do a cost tracking estimate. My grand vision is to have this now linked to YouTube videos or video content to explain these things, and that's going to be some time down the road because we are still a pretty small organization and I just don't have the damn time to focus on that. But that would be my end goal for this, is to have the Schafer Construction multimedia virtual user manual. And this is how we're going to create it. Through this IDS process, through finding the holes in the boat. Eventually we'll be writing systems and processes for things that aren't problematic. And those will be real easy because then it's just you do it how we're doing it and that's it. So with that, recently I started going to see a chiropractor for some neck issues I've been having. And I'm a very impatient person by nature. So I went into my first visit and we had a chat, the doctor and I told him what was going on, and I, got on the table and he made my back and neck sound like it was doing its own fireworks display. And I got up and I kind of shook around a little bit and I was like, all right, I don't feel like I'm any better, doc. What the hell? And he kind of looked at me. He's like, well, you didn't expect this to be a one-time fix, did you? And my response was basically, listen, I don't have time or patience to do the physical therapy thing. And I know how some of these people work. They want you to come in 3 or 4 times a week for the next 10 to 15 decades. And at the end of that, then they, you'll be all good and tuned up. Now, this particular chiropractor, I've researched very heavily. He comes very highly referred. So I'm not worried that that's the case here. But regardless, he kind of said, Matt, listen, man, he goes, it's going to take a little bit. He basically told me to give it a month for my specific shit that's going on. He said, give me a month, a couple times a week for a month, and he thinks he can have me straightened out and fixed and back doing what I need to be doing. So the point in this is it kind of got me thinking on the ride home today from the office that chiropractic care and adjustments are kind of like how we have to fix some of these holes in our boats, these issues in our business. There's not always a one fell swoop answer that can instantly fix whatever the problem is. Most of the time, they're going to be small adjustments over regular intervals that have to be made to lead to eventual change. And so that's what I wanted to end with tonight. When you go through these processes with your company, with your leadership team, with your family, even if that's where you're solving issues, just remember that not everything has an easy button, right? A lot of issues are so deeply rooted or so convoluted and complicated that it's going to take some time. So while this IDS process and the meeting to set all this up, it might take a couple hours, fixing the hole in the boat is not always just a 5-minute transaction. So don't get frustrated. Don't get mad at your team if it's taking a little bit longer than you expect. Set up parameters, set up milestones, and keep tabs on those and push for those. But just know that much like my neck and my back, sometimes you have to get popped and prodded a few times before anything really starts to feel better and anything really starts to change. So that's it, guys. That's our show for today. Again, we talked about the fee earlier. Please share the show, comment below. And also, very important here, we are starting to schedule out our year of guests. We are going to be bringing more awesome guests onto the show so that we can have live conversations with Dillon and myself and whomever that guest may be. If you have anyone that you would love to hear on our show, or if maybe you want to come and join Dillon and I on an episode, reach out to one of us. We are very easy to get a hold of through our media channels. You can find our email and everything in the show notes down below. But check it out and let us know your thoughts. If there's any topics that we haven't covered yet, but you're dying to hear or you want to hear our take on it, let us know what those are. We have a different way than some of approaching things, and we would be more than happy to at least take your suggestions into consideration and help have you help us keep this show what it is and keep it moving forward and keep it growing. So with that, guys, that's all of my rambling for today. Have a great rest of your week, and we will catch you on the next one.